Hello and welcome to Unleashed, the show that explores how to thrive as an independent professional. Unleashed connects you with the world's top independent management consultants. I'm your host, Will Bachman, and I'm here today with Nick Kane, who is a partner at Janek Performance Group. Nick, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Will. Thanks for having me.
So, Nick, first, why don't you just start by giving us an overview of Janek?
Sure. Yeah, happy to do that. So Janek Performance Group, we're a global sales performance company. Our mission in life is to partner with organizations in a variety of ways to improve sales performance within their organizations. So services such as sales training, sales coaching, sales consulting services, and talent management, all driving and focused on improving sales performance within organizations.
All right. Give me an example of a typical engagement, or maybe start with, are there certain sectors that you serve, certain sizes of companies?
Yeah, our services are pretty far-reaching, right? So there aren't any real particular verticals or industries that we serve more. It does run the gamut in that sense. But I would say in terms of typical size of engagement or typical size of an organization, we partner with organizations as small as startups or small to mid-sized organizations, and we have several Fortune 100, Fortune 500 organizations as well. It really just depends on the needs of that organization, what they're looking to accomplish. But because of the flexibility that we offer in terms of how we implement our sales performance solutions, it really can be a partnership with any size organization.
Okay. And have you developed kind of a distinctive methodology around sales or different kind of distinctive philosophy? Tell me a little bit about how your approach may differ from other places or what your philosophy is around it.
Yeah, absolutely. So our flagship methodology at Janek is one of our core programs that we call critical selling. Critical selling is the culmination of all the research and the field testing that we do in the marketplace around what do top sales performers do in a variety of markets and segments and business models to drive better performance, what skills, what behaviors do they display and exemplify. Critical selling is the culmination of that research. There was a book that we published a few years ago on the methodology that provides further insight into the content and into the methodology and skills that are provided. To add to that, I would say at its core, and what we believe is customers still live at the center of high sales performance. Certainly the industry has changed from a sales landscape. The age of information has driven a different type of customer, a different type of buyer that has access to more information, that is coming into the sales process in different stages, some further along than others. So the methodology absolutely takes into consideration understanding where the buyer is in their buying journey and providing the right level of education, the right level of support, and the right information at the right time to ensure that critical moments in the sales process are won, and that you are, meeting the customer's needs in a way that they, in a way that they're looking for.
Yeah, when you say that there's certain behaviors that you determine that top salespeople exemplify, tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a variety there, but I'll select a few that I think we've identified most recently in our research that is very much in line with what top sales performers do. So I would say one is the activity around planning. Planning continues to be a skill and a best practice that is in line with top performing sales professionals. Top performers take time to plan before each call, before each meeting, before each interaction. And that could be something as simple as a minute or two as a reflection on previous conversations had with that customer. It could be data and insights that you need to bring into that meeting. It could vary tremendously based on the sales organization, depending on the level of sophistication within that organization. But one thing that remains consistent is top performers plan. They pre-call plan, they post-call plan, they do some reflection, and they're consistently noting what went well, what didn't go well, and ultimately learning from those things is driving towards better sales outcomes because they're managing the sales process more effectively. So I'd say planning is one of those skills that we see is very much in line. I would say another is having the capabilities to dive deeper around questioning and diagnosing a customer's challenges, right, and what objectives they're trying to face. An average performer asks questions, right, and they are going to typically ask surface level questions and don't necessarily have the capabilities, skills, or the strength to go deeper and go beyond the surface. Top performers dive deep, right? They take the time to ask those more difficult questions that average performers don't take the time to ask. And when you can go beyond the surface and you can dig deeper there, you gather information that ultimately puts you in a better position to offer insights, ideas, solutions that are going to get the customer to think differently, that are going to challenge their thinking, and it's going to drive towards better outcomes, right? Because it's not just going to be order taking, if you will, or just delivering on what the client thinks they need. By getting the customer to think differently, you're going to be in a much better position to win that deal, have a better conversion rate, and build a long-term relationship with that customer.
Great. Give me some examples of that. So, can you give me an example of what a sort of less skilled salesperson would ask, and then what are the sorts of more detailed questions that a really top performer would ask? Maybe you can come up with some scenario, a sanitized client example, whether, of whatever industry, just pick an example and then give us what are the kind of questions that the average versus the top performer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so let me share an example of a global life insurance company that we partner with, right? So we recently implemented a large-scale global sales training initiative for, like I said, a life insurance company with several thousand agents across the globe. And if you observe their sales interactions, right, you spend some time taking into consideration the questioning or discovering phase of that sales process. From an average performer to a top performer, you see clear delineation between skill set around questioning skills. An average performer in that example is going to stay at the surface, right? If anybody listening to this has ever purchased life insurance or in any type of insurance policy in general, an average performer is going to ask some general questions about you, about your family, about your health history perhaps, factual information and data that they need to gather to support underwriting the policy. And they may ask some additional questions around needs or objectives, et cetera. The high-performing agent is going to go far deeper, right? They're going to ask a series of thought-provoking questions that is going to ask the customer or the client to think differently about their approach to whatever insurance policy they're considering. Right, they're going to ask questions around short-term and long-term objectives. They're going to ask questions around the type of policy they want to put in place. They're going to ask questions around what how their family plays into the decision-making process. They're going to understand their buying process and understand the significant other's role in that buying process. Right. So by understanding more broadly and more deeply the full picture of that client's scope and what they're looking for and their objectives and their challenges, et cetera, that top performing agent is going to be much better prepared, right, and much better positioned to offer the right solution, whether that's in this case, a blended insurance solution or a combination of whole and term life or whatever. Again, I'm getting into details here, but whatever that combination is, the better you understand the client, the better you understand their needs, you can position solutions that, again, are likely going to get the customer to think differently about how they want to approach the insurance policy. If it's an average performer and you're staying at the surface, it might just be something as simple as a short-term policy, if you will. Right. So the high performing agent is going to go far deeper. They're going to ask much more thought-provoking questions. They're going to ask questions to get the customer to think differently, and ultimately that's going to improve the conversion rate. That's going to set them up to offer the right solutions or different solutions, and that's likely going to start to formulate a long-term relationship with that customer.
Very helpful. Let's talk about sales training and sales coaching. Could you describe what is the sales training? Is it sort of a one-day webinar, or self-paced thing, and what does the sales coaching look like? Is that one-on-one? Just sort of tell me what those two things are.
Yeah, no, good. Happy to do that. Yeah, so let me divide those up, right? Because they are distinct in their own way. So, sales training to us is viewed as a process more so than an event. So the way that we look at sales training is you're trying to implement selling skills that ultimately drive towards improved behavior and a change in behavior that is driving towards long-term behavior change and ultimately institutional capabilities within an organization or just an individual that is looking to improve their own performance. So our sales training takes shape in a few different ways. We do offer workshops in person where we're delivering training, in groups. Certainly when times allow us to do that. Little less in that regard now, but most commonly that's how we deliver it is in-person training. Those can be 1 to 3 or 4 days, depending on the curriculum and the level of customization that we're including in that curriculum delivery. We also offer and have been offering for several years virtual instructor-led training as well, where we're still have a live Janek facilitator that is delivering that training to a group of people within an organization, but we're bringing them together commonly through a collaboration platform like Zoom or WebEx or whatever the client prefers. And we're delivering a simulated classroom, but done virtually, right? And those are our workshops are built to be able to be delivered virtually and have been for several years. So that includes breakouts and whiteboarding activities and polling and a variety of other activities that create a highly engaging training experience for the participants, just done virtually versus in person. So you still get that discussion, you still get the group, the group dialogue, the role play, the case studies, the case practices, et cetera. So those are some of the common ways in which we deliver training. We also offer blended learning, where we deliver e-learning as part of a instructor-led training intervention, if you will. Again, that could be done in person or it could be done virtually. That would be another option for sales training. In support of making those skills stick, right, and making sure that the skills become permanent behaviors, we do offer a variety of services that help ensure that happens. So we have a proprietary learning implementation model that we offer called Atlas. That is our roadmap to successfully implementing sales training and driving maximum results and return on investment. So there's a series of activities that we will do before, during, and after training to ensure that learners are prepared for the learning. They're excited coming into these classes. They're welcoming of the skill development opportunity. And then we'll partner with an organization in different ways to sustain these skills and reinforce these skills over time. We have technology that we use to reinforce these skills that offer some social learning, some gamification that's built into that platform as well. We might offer coaching as a service, which we'll talk about in a second. Or it might be us upskilling the managers to ensure they have the tools, the skills, and the processes needed to coach and reinforce these skills on their end as well.
Yeah, let's talk about the coaching as a service piece.
Yeah, absolutely. So we offer coaching as a service in two different ways. We offer it either one-on-one, where we're working with individual sellers or managers or leaders to improve their skills in terms of approaching sales interactions, managing and coaching sellers, et cetera, depending on the level in which we're providing that coaching. Or we do those in groups as well, right, where we're doing small groups of up to, say, 10 to 15 people. We're delivering that coaching virtually, and we're bringing groups together where they can learn from each other, and we're facilitating a group coaching session as well. Whether it's individual or group, a lot of the coaching that we're delivering as a service is focused on implementation of these selling skills on real deals and with real accounts. So we'll offer assignments, right, that are based on application of selling skills in real deals and real accounts. And a lot of the coaching is focused on how can we implement those skills effectively on that deal or that account. What are some of the roadblocks? What isn't working? What is working? But a lot of it is centered around how can we apply these skills in the real world very practically towards deals that they're actually working, so we can make sure that we're driving towards converting those deals into won opportunities.
Who's typically at your firm delivering the coaching and the training? Is it typically folks that have in the past been a salesperson themselves?
It is, yeah. That's actually a requirement for us. A lot of sales training companies have facilitators that are really strong facilitators and perhaps have a background in academia or teaching, and then sales is taught, right? In that regard, we try to do it the other way. So it is a requirement that all of our facilitators slash coaches have a sales and or sales management or leadership background before they are master certified in Janek curriculum to go out and deliver it in the marketplace. On average, our trainers have 16 plus years in sales and or sales leadership experience, and we believe that's vital, right, to successfully implement sales training, to train it, to coach to these skills, because without that level of credibility, someone that hasn't carried the bag, if you will, salespeople can be challenging, and they will, they'll put the facilitator, the coach, if you will, on the spot, right, for some real life examples and some real life experience. So we want to make sure that they have a very high level of credibility going into those workshops or into those coaching sessions. So that's definitely a requirement for us. We want our trainers to have a strong sales background.
I'd be curious to hear your perspective about across the different skills that you teach. What are the skills that are easier to teach a salesperson, so it's easier to move the lever? And are there some skills that are actually really difficult to teach a salesperson? I'd love to hear that spectrum of what are some examples of skills that are just really hard to teach and some skills that are, where with some instruction, people just get it and then make bigger improvements quickly.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, as I'm reflecting on that, I think there's definitely some skills that are more challenging for sure. And I think there are skills that come a little easier. I think the skills that are a little easier are areas such as planning. As I mentioned earlier, I don't think that's a difficult concept or a difficult skill to learn. I think it's more about the adherence to it, and it's more about the desire to want to take on some of those activities. I think salespeople are just busy, right, by nature, and they are moving from one sales interaction to the next. So I think an awareness of the importance around planning activities, both pre-call and post-call planning, and not just jumping into the next sales call without doing some reflection and those sort of things. I think that awareness and that desire is more of a mindset shift than it is a difficult skill to learn, as an example. I also think about skills around opening sales interactions, right? While most salespeople underestimate the importance of how you open that interaction with customers and how you set the tone and the agenda for that call and how that drives towards the outcome by tactfully taking control of that call, but do it in a way that the customer feels bought in and they feel like they're part of the process. That is not extremely difficult of a skill to learn. That is an easier skill to learn, but something that requires the right process, right? Just being aware of that and the right mindset around that. I think some of the skills that are a little more challenging are skills around discovery, right? To me, that's one of the areas that salespeople sometimes struggle with. And I think that is because of the self-awareness around questioning capability. I think if you ask most salespeople today who have been in sales for any period of time, most will say that they do a good job asking questions, right? And they do ask their clients questions. When you observe the interaction, the amount of questions they're asking, the types of questions they're asking, how deep they can or are willing to go, are different than what they need, than where they need to be, right? So I think to me that is a more advanced skill that requires practice, that requires learning, that requires just more time to get really good at. As an example, is discovering skills. I would also add just handling objections and handling pushback and resistance. I think that can be challenging as well. Most salespeople have a tendency to want to jump in when they get an objection and start to defend their position or defend that that reaction to the objection, if you will. It requires a certain skill set. It requires a commitment to understanding and going deeper to understand the root cause of where that concern comes from. There are specific skills around how to work through that. That is also an area that can be challenging as well, right? And it requires practice and consistency in terms of how you approach those situations.
Yeah, no, understanding the other person is so important. it's easy to want to just defend, or like argue. One question that I saw the other day was, which I don't think you would necessarily use in sales, but it's sort of illustrative, is what experiences have you had that have led you to have a different belief than I do about this topic?
Mhm.
Which, to me, that was kind of a powerful question. Give me an example of, we're talking about opening sales interactions. That you said that's an easier skill to learn. To tell me a little bit about that one. What would sort of a not very good opening be versus a more masterful sales opening, and how you teach folks to take control?
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a term that we use in our curriculum that is specifically provides a process and a framework for opening sales interactions. The term we use is called the legitimate purpose statement, right, or the LPS. And essentially what this is a crafted statement to help establish on the front end of that sales interaction what the agenda is going to be, what's going to be covered on that call, but most importantly, it's supported with a benefit statement that lets the customer know what's in it for them to have this interaction and to proceed in the direction that you're suggesting, right? And then there is a step in that process where we check in with the customer to make sure that they are comfortable and they are confident in the direction that we're moving in the agenda, and we ask for their feedback to make sure that there isn't anything else that they want to cover or is on their mind as well. When you put that together, right, and it comes out in a strong and in a powerful way, in an appropriate way, it's magical, right? Like it sets up the call really well. You're directionally taking the call where you want to take it, right? I think one of the biggest challenges that average sales performers face is they don't set up the call for success and they allow the customer to take control of that call, and then you go in a completely different direction in that call. And now you never really meet your objectives for the call. It ends up being a wasted call, if you will. And we all know in sales, every call that's wasted or isn't an opportunity to move the sales process forward is a detriment to the sales process, right? Is a missed opportunity. So I think when it's done well, you're tactfully taking control of the call. You're driving it to where you want it to go. The customer is in full agreement. So it's not like we're just driving it without them being bought in. They're staying bought in that process. And again, that drives you to where you want to go. If you're not doing that, like I said, you lose control of the call, or worse yet, you just jump into the call without any clear direction, and you start to lose the customer's interest, and those sort of things. Especially in a virtual environment, if you're not in front of them, it's even more important when you're selling virtually to make sure that you're setting that up for success as well, and the customer understands where this interaction's going.
Got it. Can you give me an example of a really powerful LPS, legitimate purpose statement?
Yeah, let me think on my toes here.
Yeah, it's just like for some, software as a service or life insurance,
Yep.
or just any of your clients that you've ever served. Like, what would an example be of one?
Yeah, I think of like we work with a large insulation manufacturer, right? And they sell through distributors. They sell direct to consumer in some ways as well.
Okay,
A large organization.
so let's say that I'm the
So let
distributor. So I'm the distributor, and I get on the phone with one of the salespeople at that insulation company. Like, what would a great opening be to me as the distributor?
Yeah, I think with a distributor it would be something like, hey Will, good to connect with you today. The reason for our call today is we were going to talk through the recent sales that have been generated for the last quarter. The purpose of the meeting today is to talk through that, but also strategize ways that we can continue to improve and drive better sales performance in the next 2 quarters through some additional products that we're releasing in the marketplace. By having this conversation, we're going to better equip your people to be effective in the marketplace over the next few quarters. How does that sound to you?
Okay, no, that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So there's an agenda there. There's a clear benefit statement to the customer on exactly what we're going to cover and what's in it for them by having this conversation. And there's a last check in there to make sure that the customer is comfortable with the agenda and they're in agreement with where we're going.
I gotcha. All right. Maybe the distributor is going to say, no, actually, I thought we were going to talk about the pricing. I was hoping for a discount. I wanted to talk about that or something else, right?
That in and that happens, right? And that you bring up a good point there, Will. Like, what should a salesperson do in that situation, right? Like that's a question that comes up in our workshops often. When a customer does throw another wrench in things, let's say, or just takes us in a totally different direction, what should you do? I mean, I think sometimes it depends on the severity of the request or the urgency of the request, if you will. If this is something that is really important to them, let's just say they, distributor example, they didn't receive the check last month for, their sales or whatever the case may be. You have to address that, because you can, if you don't address that up front and that's something that's on their mind and they're going through the call, even though that's your agenda, they're probably tuning you out, or they might have other considerations. You win them over further, or you grow that relationship by addressing their concerns up front and then perhaps still move into the agenda. If it's something that's really important to them, I'd want to know that up front, right? So I can address that, or perhaps, add that to the end of the meeting if it's less important or less urgent. But having awareness of that up front is very powerful, because you're getting that out in the open and you're addressing that in a time that makes sense based on, that relationship.
Yeah. What are some of the most common weaknesses or areas for improvement, if we want to be more polite, that you see when you coach salespeople?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it's the mindset around being coached. Like that to me tends to be the biggest roadblock. There are specific skills and pockets of skills that stand out more, like I said, like around discovering, or perhaps around account planning or prospecting and business development skills that I would say are more, a little more advanced in some ways, right, in terms of skill set. But I think if you don't have the right mindset around consistent growth and you're not open to receiving coaching, then that just kind of goes out the window. I've worked with many sales professionals over the years that are highly interested in receiving coaching, and they want that feedback, and they want to continue to grow and get better and continue to move up and become a superstar, if you will. You also have the other end of that spectrum, where you have other salespeople that perhaps are a little more tenured or less. They're just not open to receiving that coaching. They're not open to that development, and you run into roadblocks. And what you commonly hear when you're delivering coaching to those types of individuals is, "Oh yeah, that makes sense, but I did do this," or, "Well, I did do that in this way," right? And there's a consistent desire to want to defend the position, or to want to share why they did it the way they did it, if you will, instead of just receiving the coaching, perhaps of providing some feedback, but ultimately, receiving it and being open to it and working on the skill development opportunities. So I would say number one is the mindset, and then from there, there's a variety of different areas of sales discipline that are consistent with areas that salespeople can work on.
So many listeners of this show are independent professionals who are responsible both for delivering the work, but also about generating their own work. What are some of your observations from your experience on coaching on sales and leading your firm for independent professionals? What are some of the opportunities to improve on the business development side? So a lot of people get into it and they have experience delivering work, maybe at a larger firm, and then we become independent. Now you're responsible for generating all the work, and that's more often where people struggle. What sort of observations or tips would you have for independent professionals who are trying to source their own work as well as deliver it?
Yeah, I'll answer that in a few different ways here, but I certainly understand the question, right? It's you're an expert in X field. You've delivered that work for many years. Now you're sort of out on your own, potentially independently, and there's a need to develop your own business and grow those relationships, perhaps, depending on what you sell.
Yeah, and most often, I'll add, and most often it's people don't so much talk about having trouble like converting live leads into projects.
Right.
It's more about just the lead generation side of it. Is even, okay, I'm independent, I have my website now, but how do I raise my visibility? How do I get find clients who could use my services? That's one of the biggest things I hear.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, those top of the funnel activities, right? That help bring new suspects into the prospect lens, if you will. And that's again, speaking about the life insurance company or client that we work with, that global life insurance client, that is a big area of focus for them as well. As you can imagine, when you're a new life insurance agent coming into the market, you're essentially on your own, right, to some degree, of course, with support of the organization and training and all the other things. But in terms of business development activities and growing that initial book of business, it's challenging, right, for sure, to start that process. And once you get it going, you typically can keep it going and continue to keep that fire going. I think there's a few things that you can consider there. One of the things that we've been focused on, and there's a growing need and desire to receive training on, is how to develop and how to virtualize your personal brand. We do a lot of training on personal brand in our critical prospecting skills program. And personal brand is defined as, how you want to be viewed by colleagues, by prospective clients, online, digitally, et cetera. So I think that's one thing to think through is, who is your target market? Who do you want to go after? Try to keep that as simple and direct as possible, right? Sometimes casting a really wide net isn't always the best advice, right? Keeping that more simple, if you will, and more streamlined sometimes can be advantageous to select a market or a few markets and really go after those markets and position yourself as an expert there tends to be effective, right? So how do you want to be viewed? What is your position, and how can you share that expertise digitally, online, through social media, with your customer base, et cetera. So I think that's one area is, do you have the right personal brand? Are you sharing that the right way? And is that aligned with how you want to be viewed in the marketplace? I think another thing is just having strong networking skills, right, and business development skills, like understanding how to craft a really high-performing elevator pitch around what you do and how to make that elevator pitch engaging. One of the things we talk about in elevator pitch is not just to have the words, right, and get down to that like very short, impactful, powerful statement around what you do, and that should be aligned with your personal brand. But also, how can you break that up by drawing that person in a networking event or at in an elevator bank or whatever? How can you engage them in that conversation with a question, right, that draws them in to that conversation and ultimately hopefully helps towards perhaps getting an initial appointment or something to have a discussion around what you guys do or what you do and what they do. So that's another one, is having the right elevator talk, having the right elevator pitch, if you will, make it engaging, is another one that comes to mind for me. And then another thing we talk about is just making sure that you understand who your ideal prospect profile is, like who are you really going after, doing some analysis around what's worked well in the past, who are the types of customers that I think are going to value my value proposition. Just taking some time, taking a step back and really thinking through that so your prospecting and business development efforts are more streamlined. I think all of those combination of activities are going to drive towards better results there.
Very helpful. Could you talk about the place that you play in the overall sales and training market? There's probably a lot of different sales and training firms. Could you just sort of give us an overview of the types of firms that play in that market and where you fit?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the world of sales performance or sales training, I would say, is a highly fragmented industry. You have the sort of top 15, top 10, top 15, top 20 sales training companies globally that these are the leaders in the space, right? They are doing the research, they are field testing programs, they have customization capabilities, they have strong reinforcement solutions, many of them. You have those sort of top leaders that are more visionary and are leading the charge, if you will, around improved sales performance. And then you have a variety of sort of single shingle, mom and pop organizations, independent consultants, if you will, that offer valuable services to the marketplace, but do it more so independently, right? So you have a variety of those that primarily work local markets or whatever the case may be. So there are literally thousands of organizations and individuals that provide sales training and sales performance solutions. Janek is in that top 10, top 15 group, if you will. We have consistently won awards in the industry, recognizing us as a top 20 sales training company globally. The last 8 years, we've been in the top 20 with Selling Power, training industry for the last several years, the Stevies. In 2020, we won the Gold Stevie for Sales Training Program of the Year. So highly coveted, very difficult award to win, if you will. But our methodology, critical selling, was selected as the top sales training program for 2020 there as well. So we, in terms of the spectrum, we fall in that sort of top 20 companies globally.
Very helpful. Nick, for folks that wanted to follow up and learn more about your firm, where should they go?
Yeah. So I think the best place is definitely our website, janek.com. That's JANEK.com. There's a wealth of information on Janek on our website, janek.com, where they can find a ton of thought leadership, blogs, white papers, ebooks, a ton of content that we put out in the marketplace at no cost to give individual sales professionals, teams, sales leaders, et cetera, a variety of assets and tools to support their sales development. I'll also mention that another place might be following us on our social media channels. We have strong presence on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. So you can find us there, and the links to those can be found on janek.com. For those that are listening that are individuals, if you will, or independents, we do also offer our sales training programs through open enrollment workshops. So we don't just work with companies privately, if you will. We offer our workshops in 20 cities across North America. So these are open enrollment workshops, one-day workshops with options for reinforcement through technology and coaching. All of those workshops and the full list can be found on our website on janek.com. We also offer those workshops through open enrollment virtually as well. So we offer those through public online workshops. So if there's anybody out there that wants to learn more about that or take one of our classes, you can find more information on that on janek.com.
Nick, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining today. So I'll include those links in the show notes.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.